Tonight my guest is Garrett Chapman, who specializes in workers' disability compensation, Social Security disability practice, and veterans' appeals claims. Garrett, thanks for joining us this evening.
Thank you, Jim.
Garrett is from the Grand Rapids law firm of Solomon. And before we get to what Solomon is and where it's located, tell us about your background, Garrett.
Well, and the cameras are on today?
They are on today. Okay. Inside joke. Yes.
I grew up in Grand Rapids, went to Ottawa Hills High School, went to Hope College in Holland, Michigan, had my away years in Chicago in the 80s where I went to seminary, which is training for ministry, and then we moved back to Michigan, and having started my law school training in Chicago, I then transferred to the Thomas M. Cooley Law School where I finished that education.
And after you finished your law school career, where did you start practicing?
My first job out of law school was with a very interesting judge, the Honorable George Corsilia, who was in Allegan County for many years, just retired recently.
Allegan Circuit Court?
Yes.
And what kind of work did you do for Judge Corsilia?
Well, the main bulk of my work, as many law clerks' main job, was to get the judge ready for his big motion day. Parties would submit briefs, which are long written arguments about which way they think the judge should rule. And the judge would hear motions about those briefs every Friday, at least in our court. Friday was the big motion day. And so the judge did not have time to go over every sentence in every case, and so he'd ask me to summarize that. So that was my big thing.
And you did that for, what, a year?
That's a year, yeah.
And then started practicing where?
I wanted to, I had some other offers outside of Grand Rapids, but since we were living in Grand Rapids, I accepted an offer with Dykema, Brenton and Associates. That's on the north side of town, and now it's just called Dykema and Associates, general practice firm with Jane Dykema.
And how long did you do that work for Dykema?
That was probably another year, and then...
what kind of practice did you do there?
She had a general practice, has a general practice, just a little bit of everything, really. Her family is in the construction business, so there was a fair amount of construction-related or property-related issues, but we did a little of everything.
And after a year of a more general practice, doing a little of everything, you then went to Grizenka Grit.
Grizenka Grit, which is now Grizenka Grit McDonald in Grand Rapids, that it focuses on workers' compensation cases. While in law school, I had done an internship, a law clerkship at a firm called Smith, Hoy, Rice & Rogie, which later hired me. But I had worked for them in law school on workers' compensation cases. So I had that experience, which is what made Chuck Grizenka hire me.
I didn't know that you had clerked for Smith Hoy as well. So that was while you were at law school in Lansing?
Correct, yeah.
And who'd you work for?
That was general also, although the focus really was on churning out workers' compensation. What was the predecessor again to Appellate Commission, Appeal Board?
Appeal Board, yes.
And so there were many workers' compensation appeals then because appeals were easier to pursue. And so another law school student, Bob Blakely, and I just sat and churned out workers' compensation appeal board briefs. And Bob is Fred's brother, another lawyer we know.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Is he practicing in Florida?
Yes, he's very successful with his own firm in Tampa.
I recall when Fred Jr. was with our law firm briefly that he had a brother who practiced in Florida, and I didn't ever meet him. I didn't know he was still in Florida.
I have so many things to teach you.
Yes. Grizenka Grit, what'd you do for them during your career with that firm?
That firm, at least then, was almost solely workers' compensation. It's a defense-oriented firm. So I would do everything involved with defending a workers' compensation case, which includes forming strategy, going to take depositions of doctors, attending trials.
How long did you work for Grizenka Grit?
I worked for them from about 92 to 98.
And then you joined as a lawyer at Smith Hoy.
Yes, went back to Smith Hoy. They remembered me from my internship days. They actually contacted me for an opening, and So from 1998 until just recently, April 2013, I was with Smith Hoy, Rice and Rogie in Grand Rapids.
And what work did you do for Smith Hoy?
That started out as a general need, and so I did a little bit of everything. Smith Hoy is also primarily known for defense, although they have a plaintiff's department. And so I was initially hired to just help. They have a lot of medical malpractice defense cases. I helped in that a little bit. But then my workers' compensation background from the Grzanka years became to be used more and more at Smith Hoy too, and I eventually joined the workers' compensation department.
So what's it like starting your own firm after being in a big law firm like Smith Hoy all these years?
Well, you know, it's fun to be in a large firm. I mean, Smith Hoy is close to 100 lawyers, and it was a nice place to be. But it's really fun to be my own boss. Of course, I have a jerk for a boss now.
What's fun about it?
You get to set your own agenda. Of course, you sink or swim on your own too. But I get to totally set the focus. My last couple of years at Smith Hoy, Rice and Rogie, it's no secret to any lawyer who practices in the workers' compensation field that the practice in that field has become much slower because there's many less cases that are filed. And so in the last few years at Smith Hoy, I had to figure out a way to keep my plate full besides workers' comp defense. And I started doing some plaintiff cases, especially Social Security disability. So my appetite had been whetted for the plaintiff side, and it just sort of became a natural switch to start my own plaintiff's firm.
How's this work or not, given your experience as a seminarian and your ordination in the UCC Church?
How is my current job with
Yes,
that?
yes.
You know, it really fits better than it ever fit before. I'm a two-career guy. I did go to seminary in 1980s. I had a couple years in a local parish in Chicago, and First Church of Lombard.
Congregational church.
Congregational. That's a suburb of Chicago. But then, right around when Lori, my wife, was pregnant with our first child, Lisa, I sort of got struck with how much she would cost me in the next 18 years. And I thought, you know, I'm going to go to law school because lawyers make a lot of money, which turned out not to really be true, but it certainly has been a good career in law. But now, to finally be my own boss, I really get to help some people that have big needs, and that really feeds my ministry side as well.
How so?
Well, you know, some people joke when they hear of the two types of training I had that they're polar opposites. You know, one is heavenly and one is hellish. But to me, it always was, both were for justice and for helping people. And while you certainly can be just and help corporations, which were a lot of the clients in my prior practice, it just seems more real to help people on a one-to-one plaintiff side.
So where'd you come up with the name Solomon?
Well, I have a hyphenated last name, Tenhave-Chapman. I was Tenhave, that's my Dutch side is me, and then I married Laurie Chapman, and we decided to put it together. And our kids have had the hyphenation. Everybody gets to deal with the hyphenation in different ways. Some of my kids, by the way, have decided not to use the whole thing because it is such a burden sometimes. But I thought, you know, if somebody looks at a law firm named Tenhave-Chapman, they may say, I don't even understand that name, so why should I go to that guy? So
There's a lot of marketing involved in the practice of law, as
There
people
is.
probably don't apprehend unless they're lawyers. But that's an interesting point.
And so I thought, well, who's the next smartest guy I ever heard of? And with my ministry background, I thought of King Solomon. And so Solomon Law Firm was born.